Complaints procedure. How on earth does that work in therapy? It's Sandra Mazili, founder of Inner Action Counselling. Visit www.inneractioncounselling.co.uk. An icky but necessary subject. We want to do the best by our clients. I know I certainly do as a therapist. I want everything to be amazing for you. Sometimes it doesn't work out. And sometimes that's nobody's fault. It could be a case of it's the right person for you and they're doing everything right, but it's just too soon. I've always said it's never too late, but there's lots of times when people think they're ready for this kind of process and they're just not. Sometimes it could be the right time and it's the wrong therapist, or it's the right time and the right therapist, but the wrong technique, in which case we try something else. Sometimes therapists mess up. We do. And I've done a presentation about this, which is really long. And it was live and it was given to people in America. And I did cover lots of different areas of how people can mess things up in therapy. And I also talked about the complaints procedure. Because that presentation was given in America, I focused on how it's done there, as in therapists are licensed by the state and you approach the state licensing board. So this is the UK, where I live. The process isn't very different. It's just a question of who you complain to, and then I'll break down what that may look like. So, as you may know, the term counselor, therapist, psychotherapist, I'm a psychotherapeutic counselor, these are not regulated in the UK. Anyone who likes can call themselves whatever they like, whenever they like. So if your next door neighbor, who is a car mechanic, decided that they wanted to branch out and do mechanics on people's mental state, the mental mechanic, yay, I'll set that up tomorrow. They could actually do that and there would be no legal proceedings because, as I say, these titles are not regulated. To counteract this dire state of affairs, there is a number of ethical bodies around the UK which are trying to help standardize the training and ongoing ethical processes therapists have to go through to meet the requirements to be members of these ethical bodies. And that's a workaround that's been going on for decades, longer than I've been on this earth. As I said, there are lots of them. I'm a member of two of them, the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy, BACP, and the National Counselling Psychotherapy Society, NCPS. That's just two. The big three are BACP, NCPS, and UKCP, so the United Kingdom Council of Psychotherapy. There's the Association of Christian Counsellors, ACC. There's the BCP, the British Association of Behavioural Psychotherapists. There's the College of Sexual and Relationship Therapy, COSRT. I'm not going to go on, but you get the idea. There's buckets of them. To be a member of any of the above or any other ones, you have to have had a certain amount of counselling training. You have to have had a certain amount of tutor contact hours within that training. It has to be in-person training. So if you are a wannabe counsellor therapist in the UK playing this video and you've come across trainings which promise you a full-blown qualified counsellor diploma in a few weeks for 100 quid online, it is not worth the toilet paper it is written on. You will not get a membership with the BACP or NCPS, UKCP, or any of the others. with an online only diploma. Levels 2 and 3 can be done online. They are the GCSE and A-level equivalent side of life. Level 4, you have to do it in person. Level 5, possibly online, but quite a lot of them are in person. Some, and nearly all of these things, levels 4, 5, and 6, and even 7 is master's level, will be blended. So minimum of 70% of it conducted in person, up to 30% online. Minimum of 100 hours of client work in placements. And then post-qualification, if you want to get accreditation, whatever that may look like in the different bodies, there's a minimum of 450 tutor contact hours, 450 client hours. Also, to be a fully qualified member of these ethical bodies, as well as the training and so on, you have to be insured as a counsellor. You can't just do your thing. And you have to have monthly supervision. So we've talked about what needs to happen in order to be registered. Now, the slightly not fun part is what happens if a therapist has behaved poorly, not produced best practice, and have left you, the client, feeling worse than before you went into the process. Depending on which body they're with, that will determine who you complain to. That's why I went on and on and on. First of all, there was a reason for it. For example, if your therapist is with BACP, they have a complaint service, that's who you contact. If your therapist is with NCPS or UKCP or ACC, then you reach out to them. So as part of your consultation and contracting stage, they should tell you which body they are a member of. If they're not forthcoming with that, then ask them. And if they still won't tell you, then that's pause for thought for you, isn't it? Really. But you should be aware of where they come from. So depending on where you found them, some therapy directories, like the Counselling Directory or Psychology Today or the Person-Centered Therapy Association, I'm a member of all of those. Talking about myself, that's why I rattled them off. But they will verify their members. So if there's a verification badge, so take Psychology Today or Counselling Directory, that tells you that they are with an ethical body, and those directories will list the ethical bodies that they're with. So if they're listed with one or more, you will see those on there. So sometimes that's not even a conversation with the therapist, but regardless, if something's gone wrong and it's genuinely their fault, as in it's not a faultless thing, as in, I just wasn't ready for this and that's why it's not working out. If they have messed up, then reach out to the complaint service at the appropriate ethical body. And depending on how severe that complaint is, so if it's a minor thing, as in, they're just late the whole time or just not responding to your emails properly or just a bit of a messer. I've had a couple of messers. I didn't bother complaining, but I could have done. And that might have been a letter to them or similar from the ethical body. If we're talking about abuse or gross negligence and all those kinds of things, and the complaint you make is of that kind of nature, then the outcome will be more severe. So there will be an investigation carried out by them. They'll talk to you, they'll talk to the therapist. And if the outcome is removal from the register, that is what will happen. Unfortunately, because of what I said earlier, these titles are not regulated. Being struck off a register doesn't mean they can't practice anymore. It does mean that they have a record with that particular register, and that information should be shared with different registers to stop them just kind of going off and on their merry way and joining another register and doing the same thing against somebody else. But you will have peace of mind that they will not be on that register anymore. And if they're on a directory, then that directory will be automatically notified that they're not with that register. And then that might mean that their directory place is also revoked, but don't quote me on that. But at the very least, they will be struck off that particular register. If they're on social media sites, that's another pause for thought. So how do you go about complaining? I've already said contact the ethical body. They may or may not give you a standardized form. Depending on the nature of your complaint, you may or may not have evidence for it, as opposed to thingy did or said that. So I would keep logs and records of anything you can. And this may be more difficult or more easy depending on what happened. If it's inappropriate emails, for example, you can save them and send them on to the ethical body. That's what I'm trying to say to you. It just depends on what happened and how it happened. So any evidence you can, collect it together and send it off to the ethical body, and that will help you in your complaint. So what we don't want is people who are behaving badly to then get away with it. And I've come across more than one person in my travels who has had a horrible time in therapy but didn't want to complain about it because they felt the complaints procedure would be even worse and make them feel even worse. And it really isn't designed to do that. Another thing that you will need to do as part of your complaint is read the ethical code tied to the ethical body that that counselor is with. Each ethical body will have an ethics code and they are vastly similar to each other, but read the one that is tied to that ethical body so that when you make your complaint, you can link one to the other. So the idea of doing no harm, that's a section on pretty much all of them phrased in different ways. But you can tie your complaint into what that looked like for you. You know, this bit of the ethical code or that bit of the ethical code was infringed upon, and that will also help you. So I hope that gives you all the information that you need if you're living in the UK, specifically England and Wales. I covered the complaints procedure in the United States in my Therapists Behaving Badly presentation, link below. If you live in another part of the world, I would suggest doing a little bit of research as to how that works where you live. So thanks for sticking with me on this one, and like and subscribe if you'd like more interesting content. Until next time, take care. Goodbye for now.